All right, welcome everybody to Shopify Open Training by Sunrise Integration. Today's open training is going to be around customizing the Shopify checkout. So welcome, we are Sunrise Integration. We are your premium Shopify partner. I am Justin Pfeiffer, I'm the design director here, and I will be walking you through today's demo. If you have any questions during the process, please drop your questions in the Q&A section, and we will have my partner here, Dean, get to your questions and make sure that we can get you an answer. All right, so on today's agenda, what we are going to do is going to go through adding some branding and then adding some added kind of trust content messaging into the Shopify checkout for all checkouts. And then we're going to kind of jump into a little bit of the Shopify Plus checkouts and showing some of the capabilities of being able to get upsells or order bombs, and then maybe kind of modifying that checkout for a little bit. Once we do get into this, we will be visiting our normal Shopify store first. This is a regular Shopify store. In order to get to the Shopify checkout to customize, you'll go into your settings area down here, open that up, and in the checkout section, check that, and you have what your basically your checkout customer account area theme section is here. Another way you can get to it is if you are in your online store in the theme editor, so the edit theme section. If you're in your store messing around with the theme and you kind of want to jump over, in this drop down here, you'll have this checkout and customer accounts area. So if you ever just jump in there, it'll just kind of push you over into the checkout area. And then you can just start customizing that section here. So out of the box, this is what it's going to look like for you. It's just going to be, the plain Jane Shopify checkout. So you're going to want to add a little bit of your own branding to this to make sure that you have that cohesive flow from your store into the checkout to give your customers that little bit of added confidence that they're in the right place. So the logo that you set in your theme will not automatically carry over to your checkout. So what you will do is you'll add your logo here. So as you go in to add your logo from your collection, one important rule that gets a lot of people is if you have an SVG logo, you cannot use it in the checkout. It has to be either PNG, JPEG, or something that's kind of a more static image file. And they will trick you because they will let you add the SVG in here, and then you hit save, and then the next time you come in, it's going to be gone. Main reason why SVGs are actually images created with code, and they will not allow that in there. So any images that you want to use in here, just don't use SVG. And you can tell if you have the little SVG extension on your image here. So you'll have to go and find a different one, either PNG or JPEG. So select that PNG and then add that in, and it'll add in your logo in your checkout.
Great tip right off the bat. That SVG thing has caused many problems many times. That's a good one to know.
Oh yeah, and I will admit I had spent a half a day trying to dump an SVG in there, and it would not work, and I did not get it because there's 0 warning messages about it. So kind of going deeper into this, you have a little bit of more settings in your section. So with just the header, you can actually change the location of your header, or the logo at least, and then you actually have a menu that kind of goes into this header because this will carry throughout all of your checkouts. So here's the checkout section. You have your checkout, your post-purchase thank you, and then your customer accounts. So these settings will follow throughout all of them. So whatever you set here in checkout will show up in the customer sections and the thank you page. So you can go different kind of checkout forms, like checkout form, to get rid of that header, order summary. You can place that little logo a different way in other areas. So just stick to the header for today. And then you can actually add a background image. So once we click image here, it'll bring up your thing, and you can do an image here. Select this little image, and now you have an animated or an image for your header. So one little important thing to notice about this one, if you're going to be accessible, keep your, the accessibility, adding kind of that image with the default, you do kind of lose that little icon over there. So we can actually change this. So if we scroll down here, we have the accent colors, buttons, errors, kind of really only the images that we have to kind of touch. So if we come over here and we can change our accent colors to something more visible, you get little links. The errors, this probably red was a less of a good choice because your errors will come through as red unless we make these a whole different color. You can change these colors. So the buttons, let's just change that one. So you will get, let me activate this so you can see the button. Oop, wrong year. 1, 2, 3. So this button will be this button color. So any of the buttons that come throughout, again, all of it. So not just checkout, but all of the different accounts. Oh, there we go. The buttons, the active buttons will take on this color. So you can take that color, set it, and it'll be across all of them. You do have another little color thing. You can set your transparent or white. So that little setting there. And then you can reset your headings here to a different font to match whatever, kind of that branding that you have on the front end, and change the fonts in your checkout. So you might have seen anything about settings real quick, if you have any questions about just the general settings for colors. All right. So you can also spice up these two sections. So you have this section and this section, which is the background one is going to be this larger section here. So you can just change that color to something like this one. And then set that color to kind of also follow through with your site branding. So maybe if you want to have a general background color for your site, you want to use that here, you can set the color here. You can use an image. So if we go over here to background 2, which is going to be this section, you can add an image pattern to that one. So then you can create a much more, visually interesting checkout flow here to kind of match whatever your store is. You do have these certain controls here. So that is the basic kind of settings. Also real quick on the checkout, you can switch from the one-page checkout, which is kind of recommended. This is what keeps all of your delivery and your shipping and payment all on one page, or you can kind of switch it so then it'll break it to the 3 pages and start breaking out each section. So your shipping address, billing address, billing, it'll split everything into these, 3 sections so that they have to kind of step through.
Justin, from Shopify's perspective, what are they recommending in terms of 1-page versus 3-page?
So the recommended is going to be the 1-page checkout. So that's going to be the least amount of friction for your customers checking out. It's going to make sure everything's on one page, because as you go through, you have the shipping address is the same as billing address. And then also with their integration of the Shop app, once you actually input that email, you can actually, it'll just autofill everything in there anyway, saving them a bunch of time.
I know, you deal with this a lot, right? From, dealing with like CRO and things like that. The 1-page, are you seeing that that's just a better conversion, right? It's really easier for people versus a 3-page?
Yes, 1-page is definitely going to be, convert a lot easier because they're not having to take multiple steps. So as much as you can kind of cut that travel down, the better. Also, speaking to that, if you kind of go back to this checkout area here, you can come through and actually modify some of the questions that you're actually asking in the checkout. So here, if we only do the last name is required, then you're only really needing that last name versus requiring the first and last, which in Shopify, it breaks it up into 2 fields. So it's going to be one less field that's going to be required to fill out. And then also addresses, the shipping address, phone number, you can choose don't include, you can do optional or required, but if it's not included, then it's just one less field that the customer is going to have to fill out or feel they need to fill out.
Justin, we had a great question come in going back to that checkout design that you've got.
Yes.
This person is asking if they add background images, is that going to affect the loading time of the checkout?
It will, as long as it's not very hefty in size. Adding any extra images, of course, is going to add to page load. Keeping them as minimal as possible to keep the load time down is very important. It is by some kind of measure going to add some time to the page load, because it's going to have to go out, fetch that image, bring it back, and then put it in place. It's, if at all possible, just try to keep images minimum. And then also, if it's too distracting behind this text, it's also going to make the text harder to read.
So Justin, being the kind of design professional, is it better to have, a lot of crazy graphics and colors and everything on that checkout page? Or like you just said, easier on the eyes? Does that help from a conversion standpoint?
Yes, anything that's going to be much easier on the eyes, because again, this is a lot of information that the customer is going to have to fill out. This is kind of the end point of their journey. If you can create the cohesive look to the final site, so kind of give this checkout the attention it needs to match the branding so that they know that they're not on a completely different site, that's important to kind of build that trust. But then again, making it crazy, as long as it follows your brand, just, you have to weigh the benefit to the cost kind of a thing. If your site's, crazy and wild, and in order to kind of follow that branding through, you need some images, then by all means, the benefit will outweigh the cost. So adding that in there to kind of keep that confidence of your customer, definitely do it. But usually with this amount of information that they have to fill out, less is more. Just stick with the coloring and keep that consistent. Especially always add your logo. Always add the logo.
Yeah, from a CRO perspective, just because you can put a bunch of crazy colors, it's you shouldn't always do it.
Yeah, keeping it nice and clean is always number one. But definitely keeping that brand alive all the way through the flow is also important. So in this sections area, these sections for the regular Shopify you'll see here, there's not a whole lot we can do with it because of the amount of control Shopify wants to have. And once we jump into our Shopify Plus, you will see the much larger amount of control you have. In order to kind of add anything to a regular Shopify, you can come over here to the apps section. So any kind of customized area that you can have for the regular Shopify, you can install the Checkout Blocks app, which is developed by Shopify, to add any kind of static content. So nothing that really needs to be thought through or script run or anything like that. You can add this dynamic content. So if we come over here, close that, and then come into the Checkout Blocks app, you will see the blocks here. So you can create some static blocks. So you have the dynamic content, which is just going to be Shopify's like, if this is in the cart, then show this message, or, just not really modifying anything, or just static content. So you can open the editor and then add like a little thank you page, and that's it. Or a little added message to your thing. This doesn't seem to be loading, but we'll jump into the checkout blocks so you can add that into it. And then when you come here and add it. You can add it to the certain pages that they're only going to allow. And then, of course, Shopify Plus only, it's going to tell you that it can only be on there. I also have the subscriptions installed on this store, which then allows you to add that subscriptions mod, because you're going to need a little bit of extra information for the subscriptions. So you can add those into here, either accounts, order status, or the thank you. Again, this settings bar is going to be for the whole thing, not just the checkout.
Just another question someone asked, going back to the load time issues, does the checkout blocks in any way affect the load time or slow anything down?
It will, yes. Anything that you're going to add in here, especially on the Shopify Plus side, because you're going to have to do a lot more logic on it, or you have a lot more things. Adding static content will affect it a little bit, just because, again, it's the Shopify, even though it is Shopify's app, it's still going to have to make the call to get whatever block you want to have added and then bring it back and put it in. So visually, from just watching it, I haven't seen anything massive delay the checkout from popping up. It's all been kind of minimal. Anything that gets a lot heftier, like running functions or scripts or anything like that, like, show hide these fields based on if there's 3 of this in there, like a lot of logic. I have seen a hit for that. For anything that's kind of minimal, or just like an added disclaimer to the bottom saying, if you buy this, you're subject to have too much fun. So just be warned. Anything like that, static wise, there is, if you look at the analytics of the page load, but it's, visually is not that much.
Yeah, pretty minimal if you're just doing text and adding and things like that. Not, versus the question earlier about graphics, right? You could end up putting a huge, massive graphic header that's going to affect it way more than anything you could potentially do with checkout blocks. Justin, just in case somebody doesn't have the checkout block, where can they get it if they need to install it?
Yeah, so if you don't have it, when you select this app section here, you're going to pull this up, just type in checkout blocks, and it will pull this up, and there will be a little link icon here next to it, and it'll take you to the App Store, that page, and then just click install, and it'll be able to install. This is not one of the default ones, so you'll have to go and then install that to bring it back.
But it's a free app in Shopify's App Store, so anybody can get it. Cool, Justin, we have another great question. Someone's asking, can they add, and this may be different between Plus and non-Plus, but it's still a good question. This person is asking, can I add a checkout block that will be used to show like my loyalty program, to show their point balances or how many points they've earned or redeeming points or anything at all like that?
Yes, absolutely. So that block is actually going to come from a loyalty program app. So like one of the ones that we've dealt with before, like Loyalty Lion, once you install that app into your store, it is going to actually create the app block. So you'll see, if you install that, you'll actually have another section here that'll have the Loyalty Lion blocks in it, so that it will actually pull that information displayed on the page somewhere. You can, usually I've always seen it, since you don't have a lot of layout control in it, it'll show up over here by the totals, usually with the thing to say like, I want to use it. And then it'll also have the customer account area section where it'll actually go more in depth with the points and everything. So it's not just going to all be on the checkout. It's just going to be the pertinent information for the checkout. And then the deeper dive was always going to be in the customer account area.
And it's also worth noting that, as Justin said, a lot of the apps will add the block in the checkout area that you can add. If you happen to be using some kind of a loyalty program or app or something that isn't adding anything in the checkout area, then there really isn't going to be anything you can do in a regular Shopify. We'll talk about Plus in a moment, but in a regular Shopify checkout block, and this might be what the question is asking, there isn't going to be anything that you can do, right? Because there's no way for you to grab that information externally to add to that particular page. You can only add static information. So again, if your app isn't already creating those blocks for you in a regular checkout, or I should say a non-Plus store, there isn't going to be a way for you to fetch that information to add it to one of those blocks.
Yeah, absolutely. And if it is one of those situations where you want to have a lot more control, definitely, let's just jump over to Shopify Plus and show what we got.
Perfect segue.
So on Shopify Plus, same area for the checkout. So once we get in here to checkout, another thing to note, and this is on both the regular and Plus, you can actually make duplicate checkouts. So if you're going to go through, you have a live store and say you are integrating a loyalty thing and you don't want to mess with the store while you're doing it, feel free to just duplicate it, and then you can customize the one that's not live and then publish it, much like the themes in the storefront. You can create a kind of that development or sandbox version for you to mess around with, get all of your stuff aligned, put on it, so you're not messing with that checkout flow accidentally. And then once you're done, you can just jump in there and then publish that so then it goes in. So right off the bat, you're going to see in this Shopify Plus checkout, you have all the sections now opened up to you to be able to see the whole layout of this page. And then being able to add those blocks specifically in different areas. Whereas the regular Shopify, you just had, the ability to say, I'm going to add this block. It's going to go where it's going to go. Versus in Shopify Plus, now you have the whole area opened up that you want this block to specifically go here. Now I have these different blocks open to me.
And Justin, when we talk about regular Shopify, we should know, right, that there's 3 Shopify plans, right? There's the basic, the grow, and the advanced. So all of those don't have any of these plus features. So what Justin's showing now, those plus features only come with the plus plan. So the other plans, the grow, the basic, and the advanced, those will not have all of the extra plus features. I just want to make sure we're not talking about just the one plan. There are 3 regular plans.
Yes, the plus and then the sub plus plans.
The non-plus ones. And so it looks like right off the bat, the plus has a lot more cooler stuff here, right? Obviously you're paying more for it, but you're getting way more control.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And I guess the ability to hide, although again, I don't know why you would hide them, but it is there and you can do it in plus only. And then you do have the ability.
A lot like the regular theme editor, right? With the kind of hiding and showing blocks, right? So if you know how to use the regular theme editor, it's just more features now in checkout. Is that right?
Yes. And then you still have all the same settings as all versions of Shopify, all come with the same level of settings. And then you can do, the API level integration with it, with the Shopify Plus. That's a much deeper dive into that one. But you still do get all the same different settings that come with all versions of Shopify for the settings here. And then in the apps, so this is your app section. So it's going to be the same except for, the more apps that are open to you. So you do have these Shopify Plus only ones that are the checkout blocks where it will be able to manipulate the checkout from the checkout. So like this line editor, you can add it to your checkout screen and then being able to see here that you can actually modify that to modify the counts when you're in checkout. So that's much more integration into the checkout so they don't have to go back into your store, into the cart, and then back into checkout if they ever want to change it. Which is one of the benefits. And then you can actually move it. So if we go back here to that, so now you see that we line items in the cart, we have that block within that layout now. And you do have the ability to kind of rearrange the apps that are in here. If I had line item cart, I actually had, 3 different apps in here. I couldn't reorder them. So you still have that, much like the theme editor, that drag and drop to reorder the items in that checkout. So anything about the kind of checkout layout Shopify Plus area?
Justin, I know a lot of people ask about being able to manage things like the shipping and the payment types and those things that show up on the checkout page. And I know with Plus, there's some additional controls like in the checkout blocks area that lets them control those types of things. Is that something we can give people just a little bit of a high level view on?
Yes, absolutely. So once you're in checkout blocks, you actually, you can see now that you have much more features than just this blocks area that was in the other Shopify store. So now we have a lot of these. So we can actually do discounts, functions, being able to add some different functions. So once we create, you can see some of these different functions that you can actually apply to the checkout.
And Justin, I'm sorry, just to be clear for everybody, what you're showing now is still the plus only, right? That these are the plus only features?
Yeah, plus only. So now that we have on the Plus, the checkout blocks app actually opens up to a lot more because it's the Plus account to kind of show these different things. So we can actually rename the delivery method. So just, kind of as a real quick thing, you can pick your delivery options. If the name contains, I don't know, if it
UPS
contains
Ground.
a certain, if it expedited, then I'm going to replace it with something else based on, content of that checkout. So you can actually have a lot more control and a lot of functions over your checkout, along with being able to add discounts to your checkout. Say they bought a certain amount of items or a particular item, you can actually automatically add the discount to the order to help push the sale through. If you're in settings, the other way to kind of get into these checkout blocks with the Shopify Plus, if you go into the shipping, it should be down here. Oh, I can't remember what. You can actually change the shipping rules to like using the checkout blocks in it to block PO box if you don't want to ship to PO boxes. Common one that we get, being able to integrate it into the app, connect the app from here to also update the checkout. And then from inside this, again, it's if you are in any of these sections, you can just add this stuff here. So upsell, standard. So the other one with working with checkout blocks that you're going to need to know is this block ID. So when you create that block, it's going to make this block ID that's this, obscure number that you'll have to end up going into. So checkout blocks, just so when you order it within the checkout, we have this gift message. The block ID is 0. So every time you create, it's just going to increment up 1. So if you're in here and you want to add that, and then you'll have to punch in that number to find it. So when that preview, the block number, just, that's what it means. So you have to find that ID number from the app and then punch that into there in order to get it to show up. I have to also publish that.
Justin, we have a question. Someone's asking, is there any way to use checkout blocks or to do any kind of address validation with USPS in checkout?
So we do have the setting to the address autocomplete, so that will autocomplete against that database of actual addresses. Like we get it a lot where it's like, do this one instead of this one. So Shopify just in general will do that autocomplete to verify that it is an actual address. A specific one,
Yeah, and I think, in order to try to answer the question as best as we can, so the autocomplete that you can turn on here, like Justin is showing it there on the left-hand side, is pulling those USPS addresses, right? So chances are if it's going to autocomplete it, it can. If you need something to come in and like suggest, there are a bunch of other apps you can find. You will need an app for something like that. But those are more of the typical ones that you see that pop up says, hey, would you rather use this other suggested address or something like that? So the checkout blocks natively and Shopify natively is going to give you that autocomplete, which is subtly different than I think the question you're asking, at least the way that it's worded here about validating an address, right? So there is a subtle difference. You will need an app if you're looking for it to validate, but Shopify will autocomplete against USPS addresses, so they're not too dissimilar. So actually there's a bit of a follow-up on that. So this person is saying that they've got some customers that provide a valid physical address that auto-completes correctly, but then USPS doesn't deliver there. So yeah, so that's definitely app. So thank you for that clarification on that. That's definitely app territory world, right? So the autocomplete, and this is a great distinction between the two. The autocomplete is going to say, well, sure, it's a real address, and we will say that, we're going to autocomplete it for you because we are saying that it shows up as a true address. If you want to make sure it's actually validly deliverable, then yeah, you're going to need a third-party app. That is not something that you can do natively. And a lot of times, things like, is it a business versus a resident, right? That's another very important thing. And that those types of features come from a third-party app. So short answer is yes, you can do it. It's going to require an app. And it's not something that checkout blocks does automatically beyond the auto completion, which in your scenario, that's a great subtle distinction. So it's good to know that you can get part of the way there, but not all the way.
Yeah. And definitely the more control that you're going to need over your checkout for really anything, the best way to get to it, because the out-of-the-box Shopify kind of settings is pretty minimal because they like to hold the security of their checkout pretty close to the chest. Apps are a great way to get in there and make improvements, and then also reaching out to an integration agency to develop a function for you to handle the specific problems. We have done that many times before when people have specific needs with their checkout, being able to develop a specific function. We can actually do that. And if you need a lot of control, Shopify Plus is the way to go. If you're okay, then any of the other Shopify plans are very helpful. All right. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Quick reminder or a quick shout out. Sunrise Integration does offer Shopify Success Plans, offering 3 tiers from support, growth, and enterprise, depending on your needs. As a online store with Shopify, we can offer anything from 3, 6 to 12-month terms, offering different values to you, from 10 support tickets with reporting on analytics, CRO, any kind of recommendations to help your stores sell more product, to even more higher level of enterprise plan where we get a little more involved and get up to our elbows in code to help your store make as many sales as possible.
Cool. Thanks, Justin. Thanks everybody for joining us this week. We look forward to seeing everybody next week.